Hey, all of you beautiful humans. Are you ready to find happiness? Welcome back to another episode of the Search For Serotonin podcast, the show all about destigmatizing mental illnesses, dismantling society's version of perfection, and helping you define your own meaning of happiness. Join me, your host, Carolyn Farrick, as I have open, honest, and vulnerable conversations about my own mental health and my diagnosis with OCPD, a perfectionism personality disorder. We all deserve to find happiness on our own terms, and we don't need to find happiness alone. So welcome to the Search Committee. Hello to all of my beautiful serotonin searchers out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Search for Serotonin podcast. I am your host, Carolyn Farrick, and today I am joined by a very special guest that I am so excited to be talking to because I am very interested in the topics we will be discussing, and I think it's going to be beneficial for all of you out there. So today I am joined by Mik B. Mik, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So let's start by you introducing yourself. If you could just tell the audience a little bit about you and a little bit about your background and what mental health disorders that you have personally.
Yeah, for sure. So I am a mental health advocate online. I started making TikToks during the pandemic, not long after I'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so that's kind of started where it's kind of where I started to cope through humor. And I was learning a lot about bipolar disorder, more specifically, how much I didn't know about bipolar disorder. And so that's where I started. And, it's 2 years later. And that's a lot of what I do online. Mostly, I've worked with a few companies on spreading mental health awareness and like mental health tools. And then I also got diagnosed with ADHD earlier this May. So I was 21. And I've also struggled with anxiety most of my life, like crippling social anxiety. And I've had a couple anxiety diagnoses. One was a social anxiety disorder, and then the other was generalized anxiety disorder. But I've worked through a lot of that, so it's not as big of a problem for me anymore. But all of that has pushed me to really talk about mental health in a way that is genuine and open and emotional, while also being educational in a way that's not like general, like, well, you should, have a routine and you should take your meds and go to therapy. And that's like helpful, I guess, for the first 2 seconds of your journey. But there are specific things that I learned that have actually helped me and helped other people. And so I just am continuing to learn about them and share them in different ways, whether it's comedic or emotional or just plain educational, just me talking into the camera. As for the rest of my background, not just, my mental illness, I have a degree in public health and a minor in substance use treatment. I just graduated and I'm currently in grad school for public health again, obviously focusing on mental health care, access, and education. And I also have just been a huge psychology nerd since high school. And both my parents were like therapists and also did substance use treatment on and off or whatever. And so it's just in my family. It's just in my blood to be obsessed with mental health. And so, yeah, it's just been a long journey for me, managing bipolar disorder and ADHD on my own for so long.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear that you have not only personal background, like you went to school for this, you studied this, but also the fact that your family has a background in this. I love that so much. I'm a huge fan of, talking to people who have some type of education or background or
Mhm.
training or experience, because I am not a professional. I am in my own mental health journey. I'm just trying to struggle through it and share it with people online. And kind of like you said, a lot of what is online is people kind of doing surface level, like, hey, just take a deep breath, or, do like take a nap or something like that. And I feel like a lot of the times that's what I tend to see online. And then I get like self conscious with my OCPD and the perfectionism. And I'm like, well, that's what people want to see. But in reality, people just want like honest, vulnerable,
Real, yeah.
true, just accurate descriptions because they're also going through that.
Mhm.
So I've seen your advocacy videos on social media, and I instantly was obsessed as soon as I saw them
Oh,
because
thank you.
no, because I was like, this is it. Like everyone I was reading, I was like, I've been through this before. I told you the one about, is it the dirty dishes in the sink that's making me mad? Or is it I'm not getting my emotional needs met? And I was
Yeah.
like, that is one I literally go through every single week. So your content is amazing. If anyone is out there struggling, I highly recommend going to check it out because you have some really good stuff.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and the funny thing is that, on my personal, on like Mik B social media, it's mainly bipolar disorder because I almost never find anyone who really advocates for bipolar disorder. Again, like below the surface level or one-offs or just jokes or in a way that I find to be truthful
Yeah.
and relatable. I'm always like just prepared with a critical eye when I see videos about bipolar disorder because too many times I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is not accurate. It contributes to the stigma. You're gonna confuse people. It's very frustrating. But since I started working for Matcha Health, the teletherapy company that I work for, I do their social media. Um, they found me through my social media. So since I started working for them and making videos, I get to explore the other aspects of mental health and psychology and therapy, which is nice because then I do get to make those, goofy videos of me saying like, is it really the dishes or are you just not getting your needs met? And lately I've been doing a bunch of videos about like, the mother wound, the father wound, and how that can present, why it might have happened, and like intellectualizing your feelings, and definitely nothing I've ever experienced at all, right? So, um,
Not personal whatsoever.
no,
No.
no, it's why it's so oddly specific. But so honestly, it's been really great to have been able to branch out from just, being a bipolar disorder advocate to also getting to talk about other things that I find really interesting.
You said you started creating videos during the pandemic, and
Hmm.
you've mentioned, you have bipolar, but you also have some forms of anxiety, specifically social anxiety. So, when you started to post about your own experiences or your journey, did you feel any type of, social anxiety or maybe imposter syndrome come up? And how did you kind of overcome that to get to the point where you were getting enough views to overall get a job out of it?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. And yeah, so I didn't want to talk about it initially. Actually, when I was really first starting out on TikTok, I was just making videos about being gay, about being part of the LGBT community and me goofing off with my mom during the pandemic because I went quarantined with her. And so I actually had several stupid, just gay videos go viral. And so that's where I started out. So at that point, I had already gotten like 30,000 followers just from stupid stuff like that. And then in true bipolar fashion, had a manic episode and started like posting about bipolar disorder. Like I had maybe posted like one joke, just because I had the urge and it was funny, even though it was terrifying. Because I didn't want to talk about it online, very obviously. But then Manic Me decided that we had other plans. And so we started talking about it. And then as that happened, because the initial ones were just jokes, but as that happened, I realized, in the comments, people didn't have representation for bipolar disorder and they didn't know a lot about it. And so that's when I started focusing more on that. I started doing more research. I knew a lot about it already, but I started doing even more research to get to the specifics and the diagnostic criteria and sharing that. So that's what started me there. It really came out of a place of, please God, I need to cope with this because I don't really talk about it other than like the very, this happens. And so I have to do that, like very logical, intellectual discussion of my bipolar disorder with people in real life. Um, that's, that gave me an outlet to make jokes about it. And then the realization that people really needed that and they needed even more than that. And so that's just what I started focusing on. And definitely a lot of anxiety about it, but not as much as you might think, just because it was online.
Yeah.
And I was only worried about people I knew seeing it. Right. And so,
Yeah.
which the funny thing is that people that I did know would be like, hey, I saw your stuff. It's like really cool, really helpful. Like, that's really awesome. And I was like, what?
No, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
it was very affirming for sure. And it's helped me not be so scared of it anymore. You mentioned imposter syndrome. I still, even now to this day, because I go through euthymic periods where I'm not in an episode. My bipolar disorder is in remission. I haven't had one in almost a year. And so that's awesome. It's great. And I'm also, making TikToks like, man, what if I gaslit myself? I don't actually have bipolar disorder because I'm fine right now and I don't need my meds. And I'm just, being this person who talks about bipolar disorder online that people look up to, and I'm just a fraud, So I like definitely have those moments. And then I think about how I wanted to kill myself last semester, or not last semester, but like last fall in a mixed episode. I'm like, actually, you know what? No. Yeah, I definitely, no, this is okay. So imposter syndrome, yes, definitely. Just I'm just a person, like I'm just some mentally ill bitch on the internet. And so people message me a lot asking either questions or thanking me for what I'm posting about, or something like that. And people will be like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect you to respond, because I respond to almost everyone if I can, unless
Yeah.
it's like creepy or I missed it and it's way too far gone, or whatever. They're like, I can't believe you responded, I didn't think you were gonna respond. And I'm like, my guy, I am just like I said, some mentally ill bitch on the internet. Like, it cracks me up. So yeah, it is interesting. And something else about it that is just, it seems backwards, but I talk more openly and candidly about bipolar disorder online than I probably do in real life.
Hmm.
Like, again, like I can say like, this happens when I do that, I don't want to do this, like my friends know my routine. But I don't sit there and like cry about the the journey of realizing you have bipolar disorder and getting a diagnosis and treatment and every emotion that comes with that. I don't really talk about it, actually, and I always forget until I'm like talking about it online, and my friends are like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, no, yeah, I'm fine. I just I don't know, I just finally talked about it, I guess.
No, yeah, I do that all the time where I'm like, I trauma dump on the internet, and people in my real life are like, do you need like
are
real
you
help? Are
are
you
you
okay?
okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I did make a TikTok about that too. It was kind of funny because like going through the ADHD diagnosis process, it's a bitch and a half when you already have bipolar disorder, because they're like, well, it may just be anxiety or like breakthrough manic symptoms. Like, I don't, it's probably not. Like, when I went for my first like psychologist eval, she said that it was just social anxiety, the disorder. That's the one who gave
Mhm.
me that diagnosis, and breakthrough manic symptoms and a high IQ. And I was like, that doesn't explain why when people are not in front of me, I forget they exist. Do you forget your mom exists? Because I do. Like,
No, yeah, my boyfriend has ADHD, and like he'll forget that a toothbrush even exists unless I remind him like, "Hey, gotta brush your teeth. It's the morning."
yeah, I've forgotten about boyfriends in the past. Not like, done anything stupid, just like it's been an entire day. Shit, I have a boyfriend. I should take, like it's just yeah, so that was also another thing that I posted about, which um again, it is, something we're going to talk about later that I think is really important, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. And that's how ADHD and bipolar disorder sort of like mix together.
Yeah. Yeah. And first of all, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I asked more of like as a personal like question for me, because I also, post about my journey on the internet. And I was actually just talking to my boyfriend about this before we sat down to record. And I'm like, I feel like I'm still like, letting my OCPD and the perfectionism take hold, because I'm afraid to get too real on the internet. And that's why I've kind of like prevented myself from going on TikTok and posting about OCPD in a way that I want to. Because in my mind, I'm not worried about people I know seeing it. I'm more worried about strangers seeing it and then getting pissed off and being like, well, you're uneducated or you're wrong, or just like all the negativity that could come from it. But like, having that mindset is preventing me from, like you said, finding that group of people who is underrepresented, feel like they don't have support, feel like someone's not talking about it. And like, that's just taking away from me potentially helping other people. So I think it's very interesting that, you have that approach of like, it's easier to do on the internet. I'm just going for it. I think it's very inspirational and vulnerable and brave because it is not easy to quote unquote, like air your dirty laundry out online. The fact that you just kept going with it and, just were like, hey, it's kind of uncomfortable, kind of weird, but I'm going to do it is just, it's really inspiring. So kudos to you, girl.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let's dive into bipolar disorder, break that down a little bit. If you want to talk about, what bipolar looks like for you, and just give the audience an idea of what your day to day kind of looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So bipolar disorder is it's a mood disorder or an affective disorder. It's there with like depression, or major depressive disorder. And it's got actually a lot of subtypes. The three main ones are bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and cyclothymia, but there's also some like unspecified and otherwise specified and like weird terminology. Just but just for people who don't quite fit the duration of episodes of like bipolar 1, 2, or cyclothymia, but don't fit with any other disorder. And so I got diagnosed with bipolar 1. And so bipolar 1 is characterized by at least one manic episode in your life and, depressive episodes. The difference between like bipolar 1 is that, the difference between bipolar 1 and 2 is that bipolar 1 has manic episodes. So those last at least a week and or have psychotic symptoms and or cause severe dysfunction in your life. And then bipolar 2 is characterized again with, depressed episodes, but hypomania. Hypomanic episodes typically last at least 3-4 days. They aren't there's some discourse with this. It's kind of confusing, and I've looked at the DSM and it still is like, especially the way that psychiatrists diagnose it and tell different people how it works for them, but it's thought to not really last a very long time, like no longer than a week. It doesn't have psychotic symptoms, and it's not I hate using the functioning word. It's really frustrating, but it's not thought to cause severe dysfunction, just mild dysfunction in your life, social, work, whatever. Yeah, it's just differentiating between like the intensity and duration and levels of disruption that those cause. And so that's the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1, again, typically has more manic episodes, where bipolar 2 typically has more intense depressive episodes. And then cyclothymia is just like kind of ups and downs in waves. It's like a shorter pattern. So hypomania, no mania, and then shorter depressive periods, which would be shorter than a week. And so those are kind of, that's kind of the basic breakdown of bipolar disorder. So I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 in 2019. I had just turned 19, was having a really bad manic episode. And someone in my family had recently been diagnosed, although now they think it was a misdiagnosis. However, mine was not. And so I immediately got tried on an antipsychotic, especially to help with the sleep, because I've never been a good sleeper. But, obviously in a manic episode, sleeping is not your body's top priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so the psychiatrist tried me on an antipsychotic. It was Seroquel, or the generic is quetiapine. Loved Seroquel. I got to sleep like 9-10 hours every night for the first time in my life. It was insane. And I immediately felt like more calm. And so we had to, increase dosage every now and then. I started having a depressed episode sometime after that. And then the next, because I got diagnosed in August. And so then that next January, I had a manic episode. Like, I took everything out of literally everything out of my room, rearranged it completely and totally, got rid of a bunch of things, restyled it, redecorated, broke up with my boyfriend. Like, I just, I think I dyed my hair too. And then I started a YouTube channel. I think also that's when I started a jewelry business. So that may have been the next manic episode, but just yeah, I was just not having a good time. Um, and so the majority of my episodes are manic and mixed episodes. And so mixed episodes aren't they're not phrased like that in the DSM, and nobody even told me about mixed episodes, like no doctor, psychiatrist, no one. But they're basically when you're having one type of episode, like a manic episode, and then you start having like 3 or more symptoms of a depressive episode. And so you're feeling both of those at the same time. And it could be vice versa too, and more depressive than manic or hypomanic. But it's awful is what it is. And so, but those are like the majority, manic and mixed episodes. So I started having mood swings and things like that in like 5th grade. Like I was 10 years old, and that was the first time I started having like suicidal ideation. And so like up until 19, I was just trying to figure out these episodes, having no idea what they were. But a lot of them were mixed episodes, and they would go on for like an entire school year. Like I had a depressive episode for an entire school year. And then like my sophomore year of high school, it was manic, like mostly manic for like an entire school year. Like it really, it went on for a while just because where I was environmentally was very triggering. And so now in the past 2 years, I've only had a couple of episodes versus having like, either ones that would go on for months and months, or having like 4 or 5 in a year, which is called rapid cycling if you're having 4 or more episodes in a year. So yeah, it was rough. It's definitely very rough. And a lot of people have to go through medication changes. I had to go through a couple just because antipsychotics were great, except that my legs started twitching. And then we tried a different one, and I still started twitching again. It's just like my legs spasming, but it was really annoying. And so then we switched to a mood stabilizer, and that's what I'm still on today, which is Lamictal. And that works really great. But I do have to take a sleep aid now. I have to take like a trazodone, which is an antidepressant, a very low dosage, just so I can actually sleep through the night, because sleep is it's crucial to maintaining like euthymia and having your bipolar disorder in remission. So you asked about my daily life, and it doesn't necessarily affect it much anymore. Since I've been in remission, like I said, for almost a year, the main ways that it affects me is I just have to keep a somewhat strict sleep schedule. I try to be in bed at 10, sometimes earlier, because I just, my ADHD brain tires me out. But then, in bed without like a sleep aid, my mind would continue to go. And so that was not a good time. But having a strict, solid sleeping schedule like that is the main thing that really helps and affects my daily life with bipolar disorder. Although again, I like routine is really important. So I do have a routine. I mean, it's not like a strict routine, but I have a routine that just kind of keeps me balanced. And so honestly, like now that's really the main way that it affects my daily life in terms of taking care of myself, which is kind of funny. I think I actually made a TikTok about this recently, saying like, I have a very, stigmatized and seemingly scary, and it can be scary, like mood disorder. Everyone's like, oh, bipolar, she's bipolar. And the thing that bothers me the most is probably ADHD. Like that is way more disruptive at this point in time, since I haven't been in an episode for a while.
I think that's very important to bring up, the fact that, people hear, bipolar disorder and they get all freaked out. Whereas ADHD has become something that the internet has made almost like trendy, because it's like, so pushed right now, and people are just like slapping anything on with ADHD to like just get views and likes and get seen, even if it might not be accurate. But that's similar to like OCPD. People hear, it's a personality disorder. And so when I first got diagnosed, I was like, this is a personality disorder. This is serious. Like, this is terrifying. Like, I don't want to tell people I have this. They're going to look at me completely different. And realizing that, these stigmas are not, like they don't matter. You need to focus on, hey, I have this. Okay, I have this. How am I going to move forward? How am I going to treat it in a way that helps me get better? And how am I going to go about my daily life now? So I think
Hmm.
that's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing about like, mental illness and mental health discussion on the internet is that, there's always the annoying people who ruin it for the rest of us by making just quick videos. I see it about bipolar disorder, like these one-offs, and I'm like, not only is that incorrect, it's stupid and it's not even funny.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
literally.
just it's annoying. But with ADHD, I find that it's actually more the opposite. I like people are actually talking about it so much more now and getting more specific that that's one of the reasons I started to look into it. That and all of my friends and my boyfriend at the time had ADHD. And they were like, I think that you should consider like you should consider looking into that. But having social media actually discussing it a lot more has really helped a lot of people. And there's so much pushback from it actually with doctors, and they don't want to diagnose people, especially women or people who are seemingly successful with ADHD, which is very frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I actually did a whole episode about how ADHD is different in women versus men and how people seem to, only look at symptoms in men and really disregard how ADHD is presented in women. So it's interesting that you bring that up as well.
Yeah, that's usually how that goes though in the medical world.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure.
a lot of the treatment for things like bipolar disorder, ADHD, whatever, is therapy. Obviously medication, but also therapy. And yet, despite, I mean, I've been in therapy for um, like 4 years, just on and off, always trying to work on myself. But I almost never actually end up talking about bipolar disorder because it's not something you can really sit there and try to resolve to make better. You just learn to manage your life um, and deal with your episodes. Like with bipolar disorder, yes, working on like triggers can really help. So resolving trauma, EMDR therapy, that helped me a lot for sure. But like in general, the thing that actually helped me with bipolar disorder was routine. And so I recently posted like a 3-parter on about this on Instagram, but you have to make sure your sleep is in check, like a solid, consistent, strict sleep schedule, 7 to 9 hours every night. You have to eat enough and well enough to nutritionally support yourself. You don't have to go like crazy healthy. Just make sure your body has what it needs. And you also have to be careful about stressful environments, whether that's work or a chaotic place at home. Like you need somewhere peaceful and stable and safe for you. And so, like one of the big triggers for people with bipolar disorder can be big changes like moving or getting married. Breakups or toxic relationships have triggered more episodes than I can count. Um, and so therapy wasn't really able to help me with that. And that may be particularly because I am such a stickler for trying to do things the right way. And so I was always trying to like exercising every day. I was like doing yoga several times a week and first thing in the morning, and that's not sustainable. I burned out doing like specifically like on doing yoga. I just had to stop after like a year. But I still do like an easy walk in the morning just to get things going. But because I already figured out what I kind of needed for my routine, therapy wasn't really the move for bipolar disorder. With ADHD, it can be helpful, but that's only if you have a therapist who knows how to actually cope with ADHD, like knows specifics, like more than just, well, can you, set up your day in a different way that's like more conducive to focus. I've been trying still to this day, like
Yeah.
I'm trying that, yeah, and it's not. And so I've gone through several therapists, and I can say for sure that one of them was really, really, really integral in helping me through a lot of my issues. And I can't really say that for most of the others. There was one that helped a lot with EMDR, processing trauma out physically through my body. That really helped. But, after a point, they're like, I don't really think you need me anymore. And I was like, great. And then I did. And so but it was crazy expensive. I mean, I was spending like $600 a month on therapy. It was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And insurance is anyways. And so,
No, I feel you
yeah.
100%.
And so, I had another therapist that, again, and this was before my ADHD diagnosis. I was just trying to figure out, like, why do I not remember anything? Like, am I dissociating? Is it anxiety? And I did have crippling anxiety from grief that I wasn't processing. And so that therapist, like, he he really helped me a lot more than any therapist ever had. But then he retired. The next therapist, I was using like, I'd gone to those two therapists from my university because that was affordable. Um, and it just wasn't the right fit, and she was great, it just wasn't the right fit. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, is that if you don't have um, the funds to try out new therapists, then you kind of find one and sort of stick with it, like, well, this is better than nothing, even though it may not be the right fit and I'm not really getting exactly what I need out of it. That's another reason that I really like working at Matcha. Again, it's like a teletherapy company, but like it's very affordable, because not only do they take like a bunch of insurance, like they do the filing for you to try to make sure that you're in network or your provider's in network, but even if not, they also offer a sliding scale payment. And so based on your income and like what you're able to pay, that's what they'll charge you.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
so nice.
Yeah.
That is
and
so great.
and so obviously it's not like free therapy by any means, but it's just so much more affordable than um, any therapist I've ever had before that wasn't a university therapist. So I started a therapist with Matcha, and I haven't seen her in a bit, just because, again, I got to this point of there's nothing really for me to do in therapy necessarily, because for a long time it was a lot of me just processing out loud and like talking and actually talking things through, because I don't always think to talk things through that are bothering me. I don't know why that doesn't pop into my head. I'm like, this sucks. I don't know what to do about that. I guess I just won't talk about it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
um, and so she was really great for like that aspect of me just like getting it out and like thinking out loud and processing. But just after a certain point, it was just me sort of recounting what I had done or worked through or whatever. So it was weekly, and then it was bi-weekly, and then last time we talked, she just said, I why don't you just call me when you need to talk? And so she's, like I said, she's a great therapist, and I've had great therapists before. And sometimes a therapist is only there for you for a certain period of your life, for a
Mhm.
certain topic or a certain group of issues. And that's not really talked about in therapy. And that's something I wish was talked about more, that you don't have to marry the first therapist you meet, although you have to consider the whole financial cost and of driving, paying, do I want to try another therapist just to waste another god knows how much money. Which is why I like Matcha, because they do like a free 15-minute consultation. And they have like a matching quiz, so like you take a quiz, like whatever personality and your goals and stuff like that, and then they match you to a therapist that like focuses on your needs or relates. And if you have any specifications with like sexual identity, yeah, like gender identity, sexual identity, race, religion, whatever, like they can keep that in mind when they're assigning you a therapist that you can then just have a free little consultation with, to like make sure.
To hear that Matcha is doing these kinds of things, because I am somebody who is fortunate enough to have parents who I'm still able to be on their health insurance. So that's how I afford therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But I am quickly approaching 26. It's like right around the corner.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I've been panicking. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to afford it. I don't wanna lose my current therapist, like, she's one I actually really like. And
Mm-hmm.
so to hear that there's more resources now like Matcha that are
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Hey, not only are we gonna help you out financially, we're gonna help you out with cost, with saving time, with, matching you with a therapist so you get this questionnaire and you don't have to bounce from therapist to therapist to therapist." So to hear,
Yes.
yeah, like I wish I would have had something like that offered to me when I started all of this, because it would have saved me so much time, so much money. And so I think that's
Yes.
really cool that you got to get help from them.
Yeah, no, and it was awesome too, just because I started doing their social media or whatever, and then I actually was like, well, hold on, like my therapist isn't working out, maybe I could try with Matcha. And then I had a great therapist for several months. And so, going past the cost and, not having to commit to the first therapist that you meet if they don't match, it's also okay to break up with your therapist,
Yeah.
and I say break up because it's an intimate relationship, on
Mm-hmm.
one side, but, still like you're sharing very personal things. And so when you get to a point of, okay, I'm no longer going to do this because you've done what you can for me and we've done something together, that is coming to an end. Um, and that's kind of hard. It's because you feel guilty, like, well, I don't want my therapist to feel like, rejected. That's their job.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. um, and moving on from a therapist is so important. So my last therapist, again, a lot of it was just me talking things through and trying to figure stuff out. And I'm thinking now I need more of a therapist that can help specifically with ADHD, just
Mm-hmm.
because, spending 21, 22 years forcing myself to function and, function well. I don't like the functioning terms, but,
Yeah.
in whatever, like functioning well, quote unquote. And like I got my degree, I graduated summa cum laude, I'm in grad school, I graduated 11th in my class in high school, I did extracurriculars and all this stuff. And doing that with unmanaged ADHD until I was 21, I
Yeah.
burned out, and I burned out hard. And I'm still like trying to recover because I can't just push through the way that I used to. And I also have worked on my anxiety, and now my anxiety isn't as much of a coping mechanism with getting things done for ADHD like it used to be. And so I am like scrambling to figure out how to schedule my days, because sometimes it works out and I have a great day, and sometimes it feels like I'm depressed at the end of the day because I
Yeah.
didn't get things done how I wanted to, and I'm scrambling to try to catch up, and it's very frustrating. And so like my next step is, looking for a therapist who helps with that in particular. And
Yeah.
with Matcha, like I know I can just email them and be like, hey, I'm looking for this, is there another therapist that I can have a consult with?
And I love that you bring up it's okay to break up with your therapist. For the listeners out there, if you've been here since season 1 or episode 1, in the past I have full on ghosted a therapist at the beginning of quarantine. So do what Mik is saying and break up with them. Don't flat out ghost them, because yeah, that is a very personal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you mentioned, it's okay to be like, this is no longer serving me. I can move on from it. I can find someone else. I can take a break for a little bit. It's all really about finding what works best for you. And there's no like rules of how long you should be with someone, anything like that.
Exactly.
Is there any tips or advice or words of wisdom you can give to anybody who is out there struggling with maybe bipolar or ADHD?
Yeah. Again, routine is going to be your best buddy. And kind of sucks at first. It's a pain in the ass, but you need some friends to help you stick to it, and you will feel better when you stick to it. um, but more than that, just realizing that it does not define you. I don't say I am bipolar, I say I have bipolar disorder, because it doesn't define me. And treating it and taking medication has helped me get to the actual core of who I am instead of who I was as affected by episodes. And so I think coming to that distinction of, yes, it is a part of my story, and I have many stories because of it, um, but it is not who I am, and it doesn't have to be either. It doesn't make me any more or less of anything. Um, I'm still a person. I think you say like bipolar, and people like think of you putting you into bipolar disorder, and think, instead of thinking like, oh, this is you, so how does bipolar disorder affect you?
Yeah. Yeah.
um and so coming to terms with that, it is a process. And so actually the main piece of advice I would give is let yourself go through the process of grief. I mean, you are grieving, you are saying goodbye to the idea of a life you will never have. You will always be having to take care of yourself in a way to prevent episodes. I mean, that's what it is, and that is really sad.
Yeah.
And grieving the childhood or young adulthood you didn't get to have because of episodes. A lot of teenagers, they got to be teenagers, and I did not. I was really struggling with anxiety and trying to overcompensate and cope with bipolar disorder and also ADHD. And people my age weren't struggling the way that I was specifically. Not that, obviously everybody in high school is struggling, but not everyone is struggling with bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
And ADHD and anxiety. Um, and grieving that and really letting yourself acknowledge that pain. It's really important to move on from that.
Yeah.
It's important to help you be able to move on from that, so that you can get to, okay, let's do the work, let's figure this out, and decipher between what was me and what wasn't, and who I am outside of bipolar disorder. Because then you get to a point of, oh yeah, that's right, I have bipolar disorder. I don't know, I kind of forget. Like, I take my meds and I have my routine, but I don't really think about it because it's not, affecting my life daily anymore. And it won't be like that for everyone. It's different for everyone, brain chemistry wise, environment wise. Not everyone's going to be able to afford treatment. Not everyone's going to get the same treatment from providers because of racism, sexism, homophobia, and all of that. Not everyone's going to be able to do it the same way. And part of my advice is also, that is okay. You are doing your best. What's most important is that you are doing your best. Know that you can get to a point where you don't even think about it like all that often because it's in remission and it's not affecting your daily life. And it's also okay, and there's no shame in really struggling with it.
I think that's really great advice. And I think you summed it up perfectly when you said it earlier. It's not like you said, I'm not bipolar. For me personally, I'm not OCPD or depression or anxiety or PTSD or any of the shit that I deal with. It's how you're you and you have this disorder or this mental health issue, but you learn how to manage it. And managing it is really all you can do. And when you were speaking, I felt like you were literally talking about my story. Not that I struggled with bipolar ADHD, but I went through some pretty traumatic things in childhood. I started anxiety around the age of 5, depression around the age of 14. And so, like, when you were saying, mourning the fact that I didn't get to be a child or I didn't get my young adult years because this disorder was kind of taking over and who I was being suppressed. And I just really felt that. And I feel like a lot of people out there are kind of going through that or have gone through that. And it's really difficult and it's really isolating and it's really fucking shitty. Excuse my language.
No,
Um,
you're good.
but yeah, like, I'm 25, but I've still experienced all of that. And I feel like I'm in my journey right now where I'm in that point of where, yes, you have to mourn the person you were when you were in fight or flight, or you were just in survival mode, or you're just trying to get through the day. But like, realizing, hey, that's who I was, but that's not how it has to be going forward. And even though my life might not look how I thought it was always going to look, or it may not lay out like I always thought it was going to lay out, but now you can create a whole new version of what you want your future to be, and how, all parts of you, including the mental illness, can get that life that you want, and you still have those possibilities to essentially live a happy and, whole, full, fulfilling life.
Fulfilling life. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, no, it is hard just because having mental illnesses as a kid and either no one helping you or also having other things going on, you don't ever really get that back. Having and dealing with undiagnosed mental illnesses as a teen, as a child, doing it alone with other traumatic things going on, it has changed me forever. And I will never get that back. I am often told that I seem a lot older.
Mm-hmm.
I am like a 30-year-old in a 22-year-old body. I'm
Yep.
like one of the youngest in all of my friend groups, and yet none of my friends like really think about it. I don't even think about it. I feel like I'm older. I'm the mom friend. I'm the one, getting everything together and making sure things are done, when they need to be done. Um, that's never going to change. And so it does suck. And that's just part of grief, is that it never goes away. you just take the waves as they come and you learn how to handle it.
Yeah, yeah. And something my therapist tells me when like anxiety comes up, but I feel like is also super applicable to like grief and those feelings of, past trauma or shame or guilt or anything like that, is just allowing it to happen in your body, recognize, hey, I'm feeling this sadness or I'm feeling this, anxiousness or this guilt or whatever it may be, acknowledging it, but not letting it, take over. Just be like, hey, it's here. I can acknowledge it. I can process it. I can, you know, feel these feelings out, but then, I'm not holding on to that anymore, or I'm not
Hmm.
letting it fuck up my whole day, essentially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's good to say, it's okay to grieve any way that you need to, but, you know, it's not who you are going forward kind of deal.
Yeah. Best advice, and this is my last little thing, but the best
Yeah.
advice a therapist ever gave me was, if you're anxious, then you need to cry.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my God. Big fan of crying.
I wish I was, like I am and I'm not, but I need to, and it helps me so much when I actually do it. I recommend everybody that you have to cry it out. You will feel so much better.
So, our last question for the interview is going to be, how do you search for serotonin in your everyday life? What brings you happiness?
It's a great question. And I was looking at this question um, before this call, and it's like, this is embarrassing. I don't know. I have no idea. I sit there and try to get things done and get frustrated, or I do get it done, and then my serotonin is like, I got things done. I had like a productive day. But I do, it's, I think right now it's mainly the interactions with my friends, which I don't get as much right now because of full-time work and full-time grad school. But I do a walk in the morning, and I do it with my cousin, and so I get to
Oh,
spend time with her. And obviously my roommates are here, and they're my best friends, and so I see them randomly in the kitchen, whatever. It's a passing comment. It's a good time. But seeing that question has actually really showed me I need to look for more ways. Like I can't. I think maybe part of the reason I've been struggling so much with scheduling and balancing my life and work and everything is because I'm just trying to survive instead of actually enjoy my life.
yeah. I feel that 100%. I go through like moments where I'm like the same way, but walking, great for serotonin, killing it with that. Love the interaction piece. I think that's so great. And also, thank you for your vulnerability and honesty. Like, that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I'm like, you're going to keep it real. You're very honest. And so the fact that you said, I don't know, I probably could do better. Like, thank you for that, because I'm sure there are people out there who listen and say, that's exactly how I feel. So I'm glad someone finally said it.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah,
yeah.
I was sitting here, I was like, shit. God, I don't know. Um, but something I had realized lately is like a hobby of mine. That I write songs, I play piano, I sing, and I just realized I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't taking the time or following the impulse to do it, and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I get stuck in this, I need to do what needs to get done, instead of, I want to do this because this feels good and I enjoy this and it's fulfilling. And I'm realizing I have to like trick my brain into it. I'm like, well, in order to be productive, I have to enjoy things and be in a good mood. And so I'm
Mhm.
like, okay,
Yep.
scheduled rest, forced rest, because otherwise, like, if I don't pick the time to rest, my body will, and it's usually inconvenient.
Literally. No, I'm so glad you said that as well, because with perfectionism, OCPD, I really struggle with burning myself out and really just powering through dedication to work. I'm like, I have to be productive all the time. I have to work all the time. But just reconnecting with things that you enjoy as a person. Like you said, when I started my journey, I started reconnecting with things that I used to love as a child, painting,
Hmm.
coloring books, simple stuff like that. And so just really listening to who you are at your core. What is it that you enjoy? It doesn't matter if it's productive. It doesn't matter if it, makes you money or gets you somewhere. It just has to be what brings you joy in your life. So
Yeah.
if there's any links, resources, anything like that that you want me to put in
Yeah.
the show notes, if you want to do that right now, go ahead.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok with the username handle at Mik B underscore it me. Very creative, I know. And then I do have a YouTube channel. It's just Mik B, and it's like 2 years old. And Yeah, so keep that in mind. And then also with Matcha's socials, it's Matcha Health. There may be a dot in between Matcha and health. I think it is. Yeah, I think it's matcha.health on Instagram and TikTok, but you could also probably just search up Matcha. It's a little green thing, little green icon, and that'll come up. But you'll see my face, so that's how you'll know. And then you can go to matchahealth.io, and that'll take you right to like the quiz that you can take to, be matched with a therapist, and you can read up on all of that.
Well, thank you, Mik, for being here. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate your honesty. And you are amazing. You just have such great energy. And I know people are going to feel that throughout this interview. And I'm just so glad that we got to connect and do this.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You're so sweet.
Of course.
Thank you for having me. It's been a really good talk, honestly.